The impossible test. Maya Chen stepped from the decontamination chamber into the gleaming main concourse of the Galactic Academy of Higher Sciences, an institution that had stood for over 3,000 years as the pinnacle of intellectual achievement in the Milky Way. Her heart pounded beneath her standard-issue Earth Ambassador uniform, its simple blue fabric a stark contrast to the shimmering, multicolored, and occasionally luminescent attire of the beings around her. "Human delegation, please proceed to Orientation Hall 7, announced a melodic voice in perfect Earth standard. Maya noticed that most other species received their instructions via neural implants or telepathic broadcasts. The verbal announcement marked her as an outsider before she'd spoken a word. Dr. Zan Korva, her Sishan escort, gestured with one of his 4 upper limbs. "This way, Dr. Chen. Try not to gawk. It's unseemly." Maya straightened her posture. "I wasn't gawking. I was observing." "Of course," Korva replied with a sound that approximated a sniff. "Your species is known for that. Observing, pattern recognition, and other primitive processing methods." She bit back a retort. As Earth's first xenolinguist to be accepted into the Academy's exchange program, Maya had expected some degree of prejudice. Humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years prior. Most other species at the Academy represented civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia. The Orientation Hall was a massive dome with seating arranged in concentric circles around a central platform. Maya noticed with mild irritation that the human delegation had been placed in the outermost ring, furthest from the speakers. "Ah, excellent," murmured a voice behind her. Maya turned to see Dr. Eleanor Wu, Earth's leading physicist and head of their 8-person delegation. "We can observe everyone from here." Maya smiled. Dr. Wu always found the advantage in any situation. "The acoustics are perfect anyway," Maya replied. "And I'm rather enjoying the expressions on the Vorathi delegation when they look up and see us." The Vorathi, hulking humanoids with ridged craniums and a reputation for intellectual arrogance, had indeed been casting frequent glances toward the humans, their cluster of eye stalks swiveling with what Maya interpreted as a mixture of curiosity and disdain. A chime sounded, and the central platform illuminated. Hovering above it was a being Maya recognized as Chancellor Nix of the Elshiri, one of the oldest spacefaring species. Their form was vaguely humanoid, but composed of what appeared to be swirling mist contained within a thin membrane. "Distinguished colleagues," Chancellor Nix began, their voice resonating perfectly throughout the hall despite its whisper-like quality. "We gather again for another cycle of discovery and illumination. The Academy welcomes all seekers of knowledge, from the youngest spacefaring civilizations." A brief pause as several gazes flicked toward the human delegation. "To those who have guided the development of our galactic society for eons." Maya focused her attention completely on the Chancellor, activating the subtle recording device embedded in her retinal implant, one of the few technological enhancements humans had widely adopted. As a linguist, she was fascinated by the Chancellor's use of a unified language that somehow conveyed precise meaning to hundreds of different species simultaneously. "This cycle brings exceptional promise," the Chancellor continued. "The Grand Archivists have determined that the time has come to once again present the Pattern Weaver to our community." A ripple of excitement moved through the assembly. Maya noticed several delegates straightening in their seats, while others leaned forward in anticipation. Dr. Wu cast her a questioning glance, but Maya could only shrug. Neither of them had been briefed on whatever the Pattern Weaver might be. Chancellor Nix gestured with a tendril of mist, and a holographic image appeared above the platform. It depicted what looked like an intricate tapestry of light, threads of energy woven into a complex, 3-dimensional structure that slowly rotated, revealing new patterns from every angle. "For our newer colleagues," the Chancellor explained, "the Pattern Weaver is an artifact of unknown origin, discovered during the early expansion era. It has defied comprehensive analysis for over 12,000 years. It represents the greatest unsolved puzzle in our collective history." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Something about the pattern seemed oddly familiar, though she couldn't place why. The pattern weaver appears to be a form of communication, the Chancellor continued. Yet no species has successfully deciphered its complete message. It resists technological interfaces and seems designed to be interpreted through direct cognitive interaction. Dr. Wu leaned closer to Maya. Cognitive interaction? They mean psychic abilities. Maya shook her head slightly. I'm not sure. Many species have different forms of perception. Every 500 years, the Chancellor said, we present the pattern weaver as a challenge to our finest minds. Those who wish to attempt interpretation may register through their delegation leaders. The artifact will be housed in the Central Archives for the duration of this academic cycle. As the orientation continued, Maya found her gaze repeatedly drawn to the holographic representation of the pattern weaver. Something about its structure nagged at her consciousness, like a word on the tip of her tongue or a half-remembered dream. Following the orientation, the human delegation was escorted to their assigned quarters. The 8 humans gathered in their common area, a space that had been modified to approximate Earth conditions, a gesture Maya found both thoughtful and slightly condescending. Did anyone else notice the reaction when the Chancellor mentioned this pattern weaver thing? Asked Dr. Sanjay Patel, a mathematician who specialized in non-Euclidean geometry. Dr. Wu nodded. It seems to be quite significant to them. I'm curious why it wasn't mentioned in our briefing materials. Probably because they don't think we're capable of understanding it, said Dr. Marcus Lee, a quantum physicist with a perpetual scowl. Did you see where they seated us? Might as well have put us in the janitorial closet. Maya, who had been quietly reviewing her recordings of the pattern weaver hologram, looked up. I'd like to see it in person. 7 pairs of eyes turned to her. The actual artifact, not just the hologram, she clarified. There's something about the pattern that seems, I don't know, resonant somehow. Dr. Wu studied her carefully. You're our linguist, Maya. If you think there's something worth investigating, I'll register you for access. Is that wise? Dr. Lee interjected. We've just arrived. Perhaps we should observe how the more established species approach it first. Maya felt a flash of irritation. That's exactly why I should go early. I want to see it before I'm influenced by their methods and assumptions. Dr. Wu nodded decisively. Agreed. We were invited here because Earth offers a fresh perspective. Let's provide one. The following morning, Maya made her way to the Central Archives, a vast repository of knowledge that spiraled through the core of the Academy station. The architecture itself was a marvel, corridors that seemed to fold in on themselves, rooms that were larger inside than their external dimensions suggested, and everywhere, information storage systems beyond human comprehension. She was met at the entrance by an archivist, a member of the Tholian species who had dedicated their lives to the preservation and organization of knowledge. The archivist, who introduced themselves as Vex, resembled a tall, slender being with iridescent skin that shifted colors as they moved. Dr. Chen, Vex greeted her with formal politeness. You are the first of this cycle's participants to request direct observation. Most begin with the historical records and previous analysis attempts. Maya smiled. I found that too much preliminary research can create preconceptions. I'd prefer to form my own impressions first. The archivist's skin rippled in what Maya interpreted as amusement. A very human approach. Very well. Follow me. They traveled deeper into the archives, passing through security fields and verification chambers that Maya suspected were scanning her down to the molecular level. Finally, they reached a circular chamber with a single object at its center. The pattern weaver. In person, it was far more impressive than the hologram had suggested. Approximately 2 meters in diameter, it appeared as a sphere of interwoven threads of light, some bright, others subtle, constantly shifting and moving while somehow maintaining its overall structure. It hovered in the center of the room, suspended by no visible means. The containment field is minimal, Vex explained, merely to prevent accidental contact. When you are ready to begin your analysis, I will lower it. Maya approached slowly, circling the artifact. Unlike the hologram, which had been silent, the actual pattern weaver emitted a faint sound, almost like music, but not quite. More like mathematical relationships expressed as audio. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "Yes," agreed Vex, "and completely incomprehensible. The greatest minds of every spacefaring species have attempted to decode its patterns. None have succeeded." Maya continued her circuit, studying the artifact from every angle. What happens when someone interacts with it? It varies by species. For some, the patterns shift in response to their thought processes. For others, it remains static. For a few, it has triggered synaptic overloads. Quite dangerous. We monitor all interactions carefully, and no one has made progress in decoding it. Vex's color shifted to a deep blue. There have been partial successes. The El-Shiri once believed they had deciphered a fragment, but could not replicate their results. The Vorathi claim to have identified structural elements that correspond to mathematical constants, but cannot extend their analysis beyond those basics. Maya completed her circuit and stood facing the pattern weaver. "I'd like to try interacting with it." Vex hesitated. Now, without preparation. Most participants study for weeks before attempting contact. "I understand, but I'd still like to try." After a moment's consideration, Vex nodded. "As you wish. Please stand on the central platform. I will lower the containment field. If you experience any discomfort, step backward immediately." Maya stepped onto the indicated platform. The subtle hum of the containment field faded, and she felt a strange sensation, as if the air around her had become more substantive, charged with potential. The pattern weaver's threads of light began to move more rapidly, shifting and realigning as if responding to her presence. The faint musical sound changed, becoming more complex, layered with harmonics that seemed just beyond her ability to analyze. She reached out her hand, stopping just short of touching the artifact. "Physical contact is permitted," Vex said quietly, "though few find it productive." Maya extended her fingers further, allowing them to penetrate the outer layer of light threads. The sensation was indescribable. Not quite touch, not quite sound, not quite thought. It was as if the pattern weaver was attempting to communicate directly with her nervous system, bypassing her sensory organs entirely. And then she saw it, a sequence in the pattern that triggered a memory from her linguistic research, a structure that reminded her of recursive elements in ancient human folk tales and myths. Before she could focus on it properly, the pattern shifted again, and the moment was lost. She withdrew her hand, blinking as her perception readjusted to normal reality. "Fascinating," she whispered. "Did you perceive something?" Vex asked, their skin pulsing with colors Maya couldn't interpret. "I'm not sure," she replied honestly, "but I'd like to return tomorrow. And I'd like to review the historical records of previous interaction attempts." As she left the archives, Maya's mind was racing. The glimpse she'd caught, that brief moment of familiarity, had triggered something in her understanding. It wasn't a complete insight, not yet. But she had the strangest feeling that the pattern weaver wasn't just a puzzle to be solved through raw intellectual power. It was a conversation waiting to happen. And somehow, against all odds, she felt that humanity might have something unique to contribute to that conversation, if only she could figure out what the pattern weaver was trying to say. Beyond logic, news of Maya's interest in the pattern weaver spread quickly through the academy. By the time she returned to the human delegation's quarters, Dr. Wu was waiting for her with a concerned expression. "You've created quite a stir," the physicist said, gesturing Maya to a seat in their private meeting room. 3 different delegations have inquired about your background and specialties." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That was fast. I only spent an hour with the artifact." According to archivist Vex, most first encounters last less than 10 minutes. The weaver tends to overwhelm most neural systems. Dr. Wu studied her carefully. "Did you discover something?" Maya hesitated. How could she explain a feeling, an intuition that wasn't yet formed into a coherent thought? "Not exactly," she replied. But there was a moment when I felt recognition, as if I'd seen part of the pattern before, somewhere in my research. Dr. Wu nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting. The Vorathi delegation has requested a formal introduction. They're leading this cycle's analysis team." Maya grimaced. "Let me guess. They want to make sure the primitive human doesn't damage their precious artifact." "Likely," Dr. Wu agreed with a small smile. "But it's an opportunity, Maya. The Vorathi rarely acknowledge newcomers at all. Use it to your advantage." The following morning, Maya found herself in a conference chamber facing 3 Vorathi scientists. Their massive frames dwarfed the curved seating, and their eye stalks swiveled continuously, examining her from multiple angles simultaneously. Dr. Chen began the central figure, whose formal introduction had included 17 titles that Maya's translation implant had struggled to process. "I am Senior Archon Krell. My colleagues and I supervise the Pattern Weaver Analysis Project." Maya inclined her head respectfully. "I appreciate the introduction, Senior Archon. I look forward to learning from your expertise." The Vorathi's breathing sacs expanded slightly, their version of a skeptical snort. "Indeed, we understand you interfaced with the Pattern Weaver without preparation. A bold choice. Sometimes fresh eyes can be valuable," Maya replied evenly. "Perhaps," Krell conceded. "However, the Pattern Weaver is not merely a puzzle. It is believed to be a repository of knowledge from a civilization that predates all current spacefaring species. Approaching it without proper context risks misinterpretation." Maya leaned forward. "With respect, Senior Archon, if no one has successfully interpreted it in 12,000 years, perhaps the proper context has been elusive." The Vorathi scientists exchanged glances, their eye stalks twisting toward each other in what Maya recognized as their version of private communication. "You misunderstand, Dr. Chen," said another Vorathi, whom Maya recalled was named Scientist Adept Morax. "We have made significant progress. The Pattern Weaver responds differentially to various cognitive approaches. We have mapped precisely which mental disciplines elicit which pattern changes." "I see," Maya said. "And these responses, have they revealed any meaningful content?" A pregnant pause followed her question. "The complexity is beyond simple content," Krell finally stated. "The Pattern Weaver appears to operate on multiple layers of meaning simultaneously. We have identified correlations with universal mathematical constants, spectral signatures of certain stellar phenomena, and patterns that resemble genetic coding sequences." Maya nodded. "Impressive. May I ask what methods you've been using?" Krell's eye stalks quivered slightly, a sign of pride. Maya had learned. "The finest computational models in the galaxy. We can process pattern variations across 18-dimensional spaces simultaneously. Additionally, our species possesses advanced synaptic structures that allow us to perceive quantum-level variations that most species miss entirely." "Yet the full meaning remains elusive," Maya observed. "For now," Morax interjected. "We estimate complete decryption within 7 to 8 more centuries of concentrated effort." Maya managed to keep her expression neutral, though inwardly she marveled at the timescales these ancient species operated on. "Humans would never be so patient. I would be grateful for the opportunity to observe your team's approach," she said diplomatically. Krell's breathing sacs deflated slightly. "That can be arranged. Perhaps witnessing true advanced cognition will prove educational for your species." Maya smiled thinly. "I'm sure it will be illuminating for all parties." Later that day, Maya found herself in a specialized laboratory adjacent to the Pattern Weaver's chamber. A dozen Vorathi scientists were arranged in a semicircle, their massive bodies connected to an array of monitoring equipment. At the center of their formation, a holographic projection of the Pattern Weaver rotated slowly. "They're attempting a synchronized cognitive approach," explained a soft voice beside her. Maya turned to see a Brel, a smaller species with delicate features and silvery skin. "I'm Observer Lin. I document the attempts for the historical record." Maya Chen, Earth Delegation. Are they working together mentally? Lin's large eyes blinked vertically. In a manner of speaking, the Vorathi possess a form of collective cognition when in proximity. They're applying it to process the pattern weaver's structure across multiple perceptual domains simultaneously. As they watched, the holographic representation began to shift, responding to the Vorathi mental probing. Sections expanded, contracted, and reconfigured themselves in complex sequences. Is this real-time interaction with the actual artifact? Maya asked. Yes, Lin confirmed. The projection is linked directly to the pattern weaver. What you're seeing is how it responds to their cognitive approach. Maya watched, fascinated, as patterns emerged and dissolved in the hologram. The Vorathi were clearly eliciting responses from the artifact, but as far as she could tell, they weren't any closer to extracting meaning from it. After nearly an hour, the Vorathi concluded their session. Senior Archon Krell approached Maya, his massive frame looming over her. Your observations, Dr. Chen, he rumbled. Maya considered her words carefully. Impressive coordination. The pattern weaver clearly responds to your approach. But, Krell prompted, sensing her hesitation. But I wonder if you're trying too hard to impose structure on it, she said. The patterns seem to resist systematic analysis. Krell's eye stalks quivered, with amusement or irritation. Maya couldn't tell. A common misconception among less advanced species. The pattern weaver doesn't resist analysis. It operates on principles beyond conventional perception. Our approach is methodical because the complexity demands it. Maya nodded, not wanting to antagonize the senior Archon. Of course. I appreciate you allowing me to observe. You may return tomorrow to witness the El-Shuri approach, Krell said. They employ methods even more abstract than ours. Perhaps the contrast will be educational. Over the next several days, Maya observed attempts by multiple species to decode the pattern weaver. The El-Shuri used what they called temporal cognition, perceiving the patterns across different time scales simultaneously. The Quantarans employed quantum entanglement to probe the artifacts of structure. The Meridian Collective, a hive mind species, surrounded the pattern weaver with thousands of specialized drones, each analyzing a different aspect. All produced fascinating results. None produced meaning. Between observation sessions, Maya spent hours in the archives, reviewing records of previous cycles' attempts. She noticed that despite 12 millennia of effort, the approaches had remained remarkably consistent. Each species applied its most advanced technology and cognitive methods, treating the pattern weaver as an encryption to be broken or a code to be cracked. On the fifth day, during a rare quiet moment when no teams were scheduled, Maya returned to the pattern weaver chamber alone. Archivist Vex, who had become something of an ally, arranged private access. You've been unusually thorough in your preliminary research, Vex commented as they escorted her through the security protocols. Most participants are eager to apply their own methods immediately. Maya smiled. I'm still not sure what my method is, but I have a hunch. Vex's skin rippled with curiosity. A human concept. Hunches. Your species places remarkable faith in unconscious cognitive processes. Sometimes the unconscious mind sees patterns the conscious mind misses, Maya replied. Standing before the pattern weaver again, Maya felt the same strange sense of familiarity. This time, instead of focusing on the overall structure, she let her gaze wander naturally, following whatever drew her attention without analyzing why. I'd like to try something different, she told Vex. May I use holographic projection to interact with the pattern? Vex activated a control panel. Specify your requirements. I want to extract certain elements of the pattern, the ones that caught my attention, and examine them in isolation. Working with the intuitive interface, Maya began selecting threads from the complex weave. Not systematically, but instinctively, choosing those that somehow felt significant. As she worked, isolated pattern fragments appeared in the air around her, hovering like fragments of an exploded diagram. Vex observed silently, their skin shifting through hues of blue and purple, colors that Maya had come to associate with intense interest. After nearly an hour, Maya had extracted dozens of pattern fragments. Standing amidst them, surrounded by floating strands of light, she began to see connections, not logical, sequential relationships, but something more fundamental. These look like. She began, then stopped, unsure how to explain. Yes, Vex prompted. They remind me of patterns I studied in human folk art and early writing systems, Maya said slowly. Not the symbols themselves, but the relationships between them, the way they're structured. She gestured to a particular fragment, a spiral arrangement of light threads that pulsed with subtle variations. This has the same basic structure as spirals found in petroglyphs on 6 different continents on Earth, spanning cultures that had no contact with each other. Moving to another fragment, she continued. And this, the way these threads interweave, and then separate, it's remarkably similar to pattern games that children play across almost all human cultures. String figures, cat's cradle, hand-clapping patterns. Vex moved closer, their normally composed demeanor showing signs of excitement. You're suggesting these are universal patterns, common to different species. Maybe not just different species, Maya said, her mind racing. Maybe they're patterns common to all intelligence. Visual representations of how cognition itself functions. She stepped back, looking at the fragments she'd isolated. What if the pattern weaver isn't an encryption or a code at all? What if it's trying to establish basic cognitive commonality, like finding the fundamental elements of thought that all intelligent species share? Vex was silent for a long moment, their skin cycling through colors Maya had never seen before. Finally, they spoke. In 12,000 years, no one has proposed this interpretation. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, Vex admitted, but I want to see where this leads. Working with renewed enthusiasm, Maya began rearranging the fragments, not trying to decode them, but looking for relationships between them. As she worked, she found herself drawing on knowledge that had nothing to do with advanced linguistics. Childhood games, folk dances, the patterns in music and storytelling that transcended cultural boundaries on Earth. These fragments, she explained to Vex, they're like cognitive building blocks, the mental equivalent of DNA. They represent patterns of thought that might be universal, the way we recognize symmetry, or perceive rhythm, or distinguish figure from ground. But why would an advanced civilization create an artifact based on such basic elements? Vex asked. Maya smiled. What's the first thing you do when trying to communicate with someone who doesn't speak your language? You start with the simplest, most universal concepts. You point to objects. You use rhythm and tone. You establish a foundation of shared understanding. She gestured to the fragments surrounding them. I think that's what the pattern weaver is, not a message encoded in a complex cipher, but an attempt to establish communication from first principles. As she spoke, Maya noticed something strange. The fragments she'd extracted, which should have been static copies, were beginning to pulse in sync with each other. And the original pattern weaver itself was changing, its threads reconfiguring to mirror the arrangement she created with the fragments. Vex noticed, too, their skin flashing with alarm. This shouldn't be possible. The extractions are supposed to be passive recordings only. The pulses grew stronger, more rhythmic. Maya felt a resonance building in the chamber, as if the pattern weaver was responding not just to her actions, but to her understanding. I think it recognizes what I'm doing, she whispered. Before Vex could respond, the door to the chamber slid open. Senior Archon Krell entered, flanked by 2 other Vorathi. What is happening here? He demanded, eye stalks quivering with what Maya now recognized as agitation. The energy signatures from the artifact are spiking across all monitoring channels. Maya turned to face him, still surrounded by the pulsing fragments. I think I've found a different approach to understanding the pattern weaver. Krell's eye stalks focused on her arrangement. You've dismantled the pattern. This is reckless interference. Not dismantled, Maya corrected. Reorganized. I believe the pattern weaver is designed to establish communication through universal cognitive patterns, shared ways of thinking that transcend species differences. Absurd, Krell rumbled. The artifact clearly contains advanced knowledge encoded through multidimensional algorithms. Your primitive approach cannot possibly. He stopped mid-sentence as the pattern weaver suddenly pulsed with brilliant light. The fragments Maya had arranged began to rotate, forming a complex, three-dimensional structure that hovered in the air between them. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Vex stepped forward, their skin shifting to a deep, reverent gold. In all the recorded interactions, I have never seen this response. Krell's massive frame seemed to deflate slightly, his eye stalks drooping. What have you done, human? Maya stared at the formation before her, heart racing. I think I've answered its first question. Now it's asking another. The rotating structure continued to pulse, waiting. Maya felt certain that after 12,000 years, the pattern weaver had finally found someone who spoke its language, not through advanced technology or superior cognition, but through the simple, universal patterns that all thinking beings share. And somehow, against all odds, a human from Earth had been the first to recognize its true nature. The human approach. Word spread through the Academy like wildfire. Within hours of Maya's breakthrough, the Central Archives had been flooded with requests from delegations across the station to observe her work. Chancellor Nix called an emergency session of the Academy Council, while research teams scrambled to analyze the unprecedented response from the pattern weaver. Maya, however, had been sequestered in a private research suite, accompanied only by Archivist Vex and Dr. Wu. The pattern weaver had been temporarily relocated to this secure facility, a move that Vex assured her was extremely rare. I'm still not entirely sure what I did, Maya admitted as she paced the room. A holographic projection of the rotating structure, the pattern weaver's response, hovered in the center of the space. I just recognized patterns that seemed familiar and arranged them in a way that felt right. Dr. Wu studied the projection with intense focus. Don't underestimate what you've accomplished, Maya. You've made more progress in 5 days than the combined intellect of the galaxy has made in 12,000 years. But I can't explain it scientifically, Maya said, frustration evident in her voice. It was intuition, not methodology. Vex, who had been quietly observing their conversation, spoke up. Perhaps that is precisely why you succeeded where others failed. The pattern weaver may be designed to respond to intuitive cognition rather than analytical approaches. Maya stopped pacing and turned to the projection. The question is, what's it saying now? This new configuration feels like a response to my reorganization, but I don't understand it yet. Take your time, Dr. Wu advised. We have the luxury of exploring this at human speed now. Maya smiled at the physicist's wry humor. The door chimed, and Vex moved to answer it. Senior Archon Krell entered, his massive frame seeming somehow diminished since their last encounter. Dr. Chen, he acknowledged with a slight bob of his eye stalks, a gesture of respect that surprised Maya. The Council requests your presence at the emergency session. They wish to understand your methodology. Maya exchanged glances with Dr. Wu. I'm not sure I can explain it in terms they'll find satisfactory. Nevertheless, Krell rumbled, your discovery cannot be ignored. The pattern weaver's response to your approach has challenged certain assumptions. The council chamber was unlike any room Maya had seen in the Academy thus far. Circular and vast, it featured concentric rings of seating that rose steeply from a central floor. The architecture somehow conveyed both imposing authority and perfect acoustic design, allowing even whispered comments to be heard clearly throughout the space. Maya stood at the center, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien gazes upon her. Chancellor Nix hovered slightly above a raised platform, their misty form more concentrated than usual, indicating Maya had learned intense focus. Dr. Maya Chen of Earth, the Chancellor began. You stand before the Council having achieved what many believed impossible. The pattern weaver has responded to your approach in ways unprecedented in our historical record. Maya inclined her head respectfully. Thank you, Chancellor. Though I must emphasize that my understanding is still very limited. Explain to us, came a voice from the upper tiers, a Quantaran representative whose crystalline form refracted light in hypnotic patterns. How did you determine your approach to the artifact? Maya took a deep breath. I approached it not as a code to be deciphered or a technology to be analyzed, but as a form of communication. I looked for elements that reminded me of universal patterns found across human cultures, patterns that emerge independently in art, games, and symbolic systems. You suggest the pattern weaver was designed to be intuitive? Asked another council member, a Meridian drone speaking for its collective. I believe it was designed to establish communication from first principles, Maya replied, to find common cognitive ground across different types of intelligence. A murmur ran through the chamber. Chancellor Nix's form rippled slightly. A bold hypothesis, they commented. Yet it contradicts millennia of scholarly consensus that the pattern weaver contains advanced knowledge encoded through complex mathematical structures. With respect, Chancellor, Maya said, perhaps it contains both. In human communication, we often begin with simple concepts before progressing to more complex ones. The pattern weaver may be attempting to establish basic cognitive alignment before sharing more sophisticated content. From a lower tier, a Vorathi scientist, not Krell, but one Maya recognized from the research team, raised an appendage. The human's approach lacks rigor. She admits herself it was based on intuition, an unreliable and subjective process. We cannot build scientific understanding on such foundations. Before Maya could respond, another voice joined the discussion, melodic and fluid, coming from a section Maya hadn't noticed before.